All this talk about year three under Brian Kelly. Are the Tigers ready to be elite again? We're talking about it. It's Locked on LSU. Let's go.
You are Locked on LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. We are so glad to have you aboard with us here, and I am coming to you from, well, a night fallen Las Vegas as we record here on Thursday night. Got into Vegas today, ready for LSU and USC, and excited to bring you content here from Sin City over the next several days. We're getting you set for LSU and USC. As a matter of fact, professional handicapper Lee Sterling gave his pick on LSU and USC. Tease, spoiler alert, you're going to like it if you're an LSU fan. Stay tuned for that. Brian Kelly met with reporters on Thursday. We'll delve into what he said, including a decision on a backup quarterback and why they're going to use two punters. So all that is coming right ahead. But look, on tomorrow's episode, I'm going to give you a full preview and prediction on the game. And we've talked plenty about LSU and USC all throughout this offseason. And I don't know how much more of the game we can break down. I still got plenty to come, and we're going to make sure we do that for you. But literally on the flight from Baton Rouge to Las Vegas today, I kind of got to thinking, and maybe I might wax poetic a little here, but I'll delve into that. Forgive me, I should have told you as well. Thank you for making us your first listen every day. We're free, available wherever you get great podcasts. Of course, today's episode also brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. 5 Hour Energy fixes tired fast with zero sugar and a convenient portable size. It's the perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. Go to 5hourenergy.com. Use promo code LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. Go to 5hourenergy.com today. So I mentioned flying over here, and I just got to thinking about where LSU's program was, 4 short years ago, claiming college football's national championship. I guess 5 years now, and where they are now and how they got there. And I don't want to wax poetic, but I also believe it's not a coincidence that Brian Kelly's teams hit an inflection point in his third year. Of course, his third year at Central Michigan, they won a conference championship. In his third year at Cincinnati, they had an undefeated regular season. Third year at Notre Dame, they played for the national championship against Alabama, got annihilated, but that was still year 3. And I've referenced it several times, but Brian Kelly did mention at SEC Media Days this year when he talked about year 3 and why his teams have had success in year 3. The point he made was, he comes in and he tries to establish culture and habits. And by the time you get to year 3, he's ingrained that culture by and large in the program. The players that have come up through his program for 3 years are the upperclassmen now. The players who maybe weren't all the way bought in have been purged out of the program. So you have full buy-in. And then when you have laid that foundation, that cultural foundation, then you can start to demand more from your entire team, your entire organization. That's kind of what we're seeing. And I think it's difficult sometimes for LSU fans to allow themselves to remember what Brian Kelly inherited. Y'all, in the 2 seasons after what was the greatest season in the history of college football, LSU combined to go 11-12. I mean, you had a Mississippi State quarterback set an SEC single-game passing record in Tiger Stadium, and then that same quarterback was benched within the month. We saw the most lopsided loss in the history of the Alabama series in 2020. I mean, you got blown out at Kentucky in 2021. Same year, you laid down and quit in Oxford against Ole Miss. A lot of people try to forget that. I can't. I mean, you had a receiver playing quarterback in a bowl game. It was an atrocious fall. So atrocious that LSU was willing to pay Ed Ogeron $17 million to go away less than 2 years after the greatest season in the history of college football. It was bad. It was really bad what Brian Kelly inherited. He inherited a program that was in the worst shape it had been since Nick Saban was hired late in 1999. Brian Kelly's first order of business, obviously aside from rebuilding the roster, just numbers, a roster that Ed Ogeron decimated. He had to rebuild the culture. It was interesting because Brian Kelly was asked on Thursday when he met with reporters before the USC game about the culture within the program. And he was asked about the recruiting and the roster building, how the number of transfers has come down, the number of high school signees has gone up. And he was asked if that was intentional. Of course, the answer was yes, but listen to why.
No, it's intentional. Everything that we do is with a purpose. So, you'll continue to see us get to the point where, the culture and the standards of the program will be one where we want to be able to recruit the state of Louisiana as our base. We want to be able to develop our players, retain our players, obviously build great relationships so they stay, and then, watch them have success while they're here. And we want to do that through the developmental process in terms of developing players. And it's a lot harder to do that when they have 1 or 2 years remaining and they have, other habits that they built somewhere else. So we want that to be something that is part of what the fabric of our program is. That does not mean we won't take somebody from the transfer portal. That doesn't mean we won't take a transfer. But the culture, the standards, who we are as a program will be based upon developing freshmen.
I don't know if you could say it any more plainly. When Brian Kelly was hired, more than 30 people within the program, not just coaches, but staffers, longtime support personnel, they were all shown the door. The complacency was gone. Expectation, again, became the standard. They did accountability checks daily with the players. What are you eating? What are you going to sleep? Are you going to class? All of those sorts of things. And it wasn't perfect at first. We all remember the first game of the Brian Kelly era. It was not fantastic. You had errant snaps, muff punts. You had a crushing blocked PAT, which cost you a chance to tie the game and send it to overtime. But the results came in that first year. Within 2 months, you were beating Bama. You won the West. You were going to Atlanta to play for the SEC championship. Of course, you also had a head-scratching loss to a sub-500 Texas A&M team and got blown out by Georgia. So consistency is the challenge, has been the challenge, but LSU clearly, Brian Kelly had him on the right track at that point. And last season was equal part exhilarating with Jaden Daniels winning a Heisman and infuriating on account of the worst defense statistically in program history. But perspective matters. It has to matter. I mean, you had a Heisman winner and back-to-back 10-win seasons, which is light years from the 2 seasons that preceded Brian Kelly's arrival. It takes time to build a championship program, especially from where they were. Yes, you have to have talent, but you also have to have culture, and sometimes culture can be harder to build than talent. Look at Texas A&M. They went and bought the best recruiting class ever. More than half that class was gone after 1 year, and the culture eroded under Jimbo Fisher. So now, obviously, year 3 under Brian Kelly is here, and all those star players that Brian Kelly talked about, the Will Campbells, Emory Jones, Harold Perkins, all those guys that were freshmen in 2022, now they're the upperclassmen. They're the ones who for 3 years have only known this culture. And I told you this story before, but in fall camp, when they were running pass rush drills, freshman Ori Williams got beaten badly. And Will Campbell went over to him and said something to him. I have no idea what it was. It was in plain sight of everybody who could see that Will went and talked to him, but he didn't say anything loud enough that anybody within earshot could hear. The next rep, Ori Williams won that rep. That's the culture Brian Kelly has started to instill 2 seasons ago, and that has now taken root with the upperclassmen and the best players on this team right now. And I think Sunday night, right here in Las Vegas, you got the opportunity to see just how far LSU has come against another marquee opponent who's going through its own existential crisis. And I think history under Brian Kelly has proven to be a pretty good predictor of what is to come. Of course, I'll give you my prediction on LSU and USC on our Saturday episode, our final prediction episode before the Tigers and the Trojans take the field. Okay, glad to have you hanging out with us here. We got a ton to get to. Brian Kelly did meet with reporters on Thursday night, updating the backup quarterback, the punting job. We'll get to that as we continue Locked on LSU, your team every day. Pretty excited to tell you about Factor because I'm a Factor customer. You can fuel up with Factor's no prep, no mess meals. If you have wellness goals that you're trying to meet, they have chef-crafted meals with tons of options. They have calorie smart options. They have protein plus. They have keto. It's fresh, never frozen. They're dietitian approved meals, and they're ready to eat in 2 minutes. So my wife is in the other part of the hotel room, and I could call her over here to validate this, but I'm a Factor customer. It was before we started talking about him here on Locked On. I've done a lot of meal prep plans, and Factor is the best tasting, most convenient, best value meal prep plan that I personally have ever done. Could not recommend it highly enough. If you're trying to save yourself some time by not having a meal prep over the weekend, which is what we were doing. I say we, my wife, Erica was doing that for me. She would spend all day Sunday meal prepping for me. And I finally got to the point I said, let's give you your Sundays back. Let's find something that's easier. And I've gone through 4 or 5 different meal prep services. And I'm telling you, Factor is the best tasting, the most convenient. They ship to your door. If you want it, like I'm in Vegas right now. So my meals are usually delivered on Monday. Well, Monday is Labor Day. So they're actually going to deliver on Wednesday. So I just skipped this week. There's no penalty for that. I just tapped one button, skipped a week, and I'll pick up the following week. So if you're interested, you need to check it out. And of course, we have a great deal for you as well. So head to factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 and use the code LockedOnCollege50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. That's code LockedOnCollege50 at factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month while your subscription is active. And also, love telling you about our friends over at eBay Motors who have been really great partners of ours here on Locked On LSU. Passion, drive, patience, the formula for winning championships. It's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Brian Kelly met with reporters on Thursday, and there was a handful of newsy items that Kelly had to go over. First, and one thing a lot of folks have asked about is the backup quarterback. Of course, you've got A.J. Swan, who spent the last 2 years at Vanderbilt, and you've got their redshirt freshman Ricky Collins, who redshirted a year ago in Baton Rouge from Woodlawn in Baton Rouge. And we've talked a good bit about both guys throughout fall camp, and my assertion of them has been pretty standard. I think Ricky Collins has the higher ceiling athletically, great arm talent, throws a beautiful deep ball, and with athleticism has maneuverability both inside and out of the pocket. A.J. Swan, meanwhile, he is a check down Charlie. He's going to try to find the outlet, get the ball out of his hands quickly and accurately, and let playmakers do what they do. He certainly doesn't have great arm strength, although he's lost about, I think, 17 pounds based on what the roster says. He's not a guy with great mobility, but you have 2 different quarterbacks. And when Brian Kelly was asked about the backup quarterback, he said, well, listen.
We do have a second quarterback. It's really going to be both of them. AJ and Ricky combined give us the best option at the number 2. So we think that they have different skill sets, and we're going to utilize the combination of both of them to give us the best number 2 situation.
If you're saying you're going to play them both, it's because nobody has distinguished himself and won that job. I'm going to maintain that hypothetically, and knock on wood, and it doesn't come down to this, but if on Sunday, let's just say Garrett Nussmeier's chin strap breaks and has to come out of the game for a play, I think Ricky Collins goes in. I think he's got the higher ceiling. He's been at LSU for 2 years, or this is his second year, I should say. I think although A.J. Swan has played games and started games in the SEC, I think you go with the guy with the higher ceiling, and I think that's Ricky Collins. That is just a guess. I want to be abundantly clear. That is just a guess. Now, Brian Kelly also was asked about the punting situation, and we've talked about that plenty, and actually a few episodes ago, you can go back and listen to my full comments throughout all of camp, sort of handicapping what I think is going to happen there with the punting situation. And Brian Kelly elaborated a bit on how and why they plan on using two.
Well, we want to include the ability to move our punter this year. Jay was not somebody that felt comfortable in a rugby fashion. He wanted to be a down-the-line kicker. But Blake is accomplished in that and feels comfortable in that kind of Aussie rugby type environment. And there are times that you want to be able to implement that, and he's comfortable and accomplished with it, where Peyton Todd is much more of a down-the-line guy. So it gives us two weapons within our punt arsenal, and we want to be able to take advantage of that.
It's so interesting to hear Brian Kelly almost lament not having a rugby-style punter with Jay Bramblett when Bramblett was so good the last 2 years. As I mentioned, last year, Jay Bramblett had 2 punts returned against him all year. 2 punts for -1 yard. He was fantastic at putting it where it needed to go and preventing the opponent from returning the football. And that's something LSU certainly struggled with so far in this fall camp. I'll repeat my assertion, which is that if LSU gets into a situation where they're at their own 20-yard line and they need to try to flip the field, I think that's Peyton Todd. I think a booming leg, he's the guy. I think your drive stalls out around midfield, you're trying to pin him deep. I think that's Blake Oxendorf. I think that's how they use it, just from based on what I've seen in fall camp. I don't know the answer. Brian Kelly's not telling us definitively, but if they plan to use them both, I think that's how they use them both. And one more tidbit from BK on Thursday. Of course, the question we've been asking all throughout the week is the injury situation with Chris Hilton and Miles Fraser. And BK gave good news on Fraser and still iffy news on Hilton.
Fraser is good to go. He's practiced all week. Chris is still in progression, and we're hopeful that we get him ready to play. But he's making good progress.
As much as I want Chris Hilton to be healthy and ready to go and have a full, awesome senior season, I think Miles Fraser is the more important player here. We've talked plenty this week about how LSU plans to run the ball, to line up behind that great offensive line, and try to control the game in that manner. Well, if that's the case, then it's an advantage having your full complement of starters. And Miles Fraser is now a 3-year starter at LSU and a 4-year starter in his college career. So, yeah, I mean, if you gave me the choice, I'd rather have Fraser than Hilton. I'm pulling very much for Chris Hilton. Please don't misunderstand me. Yeah, I think you know that. I'm very much on the record there. But who would be the more impactful player? Yeah, I mean, you got a bevy of receivers. And if Fraser couldn't go, then it would be Tyree Adams, a redshirt freshman who hasn't played much, starting at right guard. So great news that Miles Fraser appears ready to go. Okay, y'all. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. I'll give you my pick before the game, but professional handicapper Lee Sterling stopped by my radio show and gave his pick on LSU and USC. And if you're an LSU fan, you're going to love this. It's next. Locked on LSU, your team every day. Our show today is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. I took a 5-hour energy today. As a matter of fact, we were doing the show at the Baton Rouge Metro Airport and packed it up after 2 hours and then got on the plane. Well, right before my show, I took a 5-hour energy shot. It's easy. It's convenient. It takes seconds and starts working in minutes. If you've never tried 5 Hour Energy, it fixes tired fast. If you want to get in the zone, That's what it did for me. I think a lot of people might be afraid, oh, will I get the jitters? I never got jitters, shakes, anything like that. 5-Hour Energy gives you this feeling of alertness and energy to get in the zone. I've told you, for me, starting a 3-hour radio show, 5-Hour Energy gives me focus. And whether it's focus on watching sports, if it's before your workout, if it's to tackle a to-do list, if it's after lunch to get you through the rest of the day, try 5-Hour Energy. And of course, we've got a great deal for you. If you go to 5hourenergy.com, that's the number 5, go to 5hourenergy.com and get some 5-Hour Energy product today. You can use my promo code LOCKEDONCFB. That's LOCKEDONCFB, all one word, to receive 20% off your order. Offers only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. So go to 5hourenergy.com today. That's 5hourenergy.com. We're counting down to LSU and USC right here in beautiful Las Vegas. When we touched down at Harry Reid Airport in Las Vegas, there was already tons of purple and gold. And where we're staying, not just away from the epicenter, which is the Mandalay Bay, that's where the majority of the LSU, that's where the LSU Alumni Association and some 2,000 or so fans are staying. That's the closest hotel to Allegiant Stadium here in Las Vegas. So very excited to get to Allegiant Stadium. If you haven't heard the schedule yet for the week, of course, LSU isn't traveling until Saturday. I think it's something Brian Kelly did very intentionally, was to keep his team away from Vegas. The team was originally supposed to stay at Mandalay Bay, again, proximity to the stadium. It's the closest hotel to Allegiant Stadium, but they several months back moved to Resort World, which is farther down the strip. And I think the idea being that Brian Kelly is not trying to get his team in any way distracted, not to be in the epicenter of LSU fans and partying and all the attention and everything going on. It's fly in, win a game, fly home. So LSU's flying in on Saturday. They'll go through all their pregame walkthroughs and everything on Sunday, play the game, and fly home. This is not about anything more than playing USC for that football team. And Brian Kelly's trying to limit distractions as best he can, and I salute him. And there's at least one professional handicapper who is very high on Brian Kelly and the Tigers in this game and this year. I have a chance to talk to Lee Sterling, who's a 30-year professional handicapper from Paramount Sports, and I asked him his pick on LSU USC. Here's what he said.
You have two third-year coaches looking to turn the corner, get into the college football playoff. That's what's going to make this season so great. I mean, you could be sitting 15th, 20th, 25th, and you run the table the last 2-3 games, you got a shot to get in. So I think it's going to be a fun year here. I think LSU is in a better spot, even without Jaden Daniels. His passing will be missed, but they got 3 offensive line potential all-conference first or second team guys. They ran for 6.2 yards per carry last year. USC's run defense allowed 4.8 yards per carry. They returned 1 starting defensive lineman. Look at the transfers on the defense who they brought in. 1 from Vandy, 1 from Georgia State, 2 each from UCLA and Oregon. And I think they're in trouble. LSU by double digits here, 35-24.
Home team. From Lee's lips to God's ears. Got the Tigers by double digits, does Lee Sterling. We'll see if he's right. Of course, we'll have plenty more predictions here over the next couple of days. Have a chance every Friday to talk to Phil Steele, so we'll let you hear what Phil Steele has to say on the LSU game. Of course, I'll give you my pick as well for LSU and USC. Hey, thanks so much for being here with us. Thanks for making us your first listen every single day. Now, go check out Locked On College Football. You can find the link to Locked On College Football in the description, so you don't even need to search. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hey, thanks for being here. If you're on podcast, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Rate us, leave a review. If you're on YouTube, smash that like button, hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video. Please subscribe to the channel as well. And let a friend know that if they love the Tigers, we got you here every single day for Locked On LSU, your team every day.